How's it going, YouTube? Got FourthStarTCG here, and today covering a topic that a lot of people have a lot of speculation about, and I don't think anyone's quite gotten it right. And I don't think anyone can get it right, but I wanted to give my thoughts and, give the best my best idea and best outlook on this. And it is like the Pokemon market, how we got to where we are today, especially sort of like an analysis and a taking stock of the last 6 or 7 months or so, really getting closer to 7 months now, of significant market increases. And I want to talk about why we're seeing such significant market increases, what parts are temporary and what parts are sort of more permanent than others. So basically, I'm just going to tell you what I think about how we got from the Pokemon market, the prices in September of 2019, to the prices now. You got my Charizard EX here, how we went from a Charizard EX being $530 in August of 2019 to being $3,000 in August of 2020. So the big thing that's happened in these last 6 months that a lot of people immediately look to explain the recent Pokemon market rises is the pandemic. And what we're all dealing with right now, the massive interruptions to the economy, the massive changes that are present in our economy and in our way of life. And I think people are often too quick to attribute all of the rise to the pandemic, when in reality you can only attribute some of the rise, maybe like a little more than 50%, I'd say, to the pandemic. I'm firmly of the belief that if there wasn't a pandemic, we would still see a significant amount of market rises, because and this is sort of, we were seeing rises before this pandemic hit. I remember talking to people in January about Neo cards, first edition Neo, really starting to pick up steam and rise. A lot of those, the Neo sets, the Nintendo E-Series sets, Skyridge, Aquapolis, those were picking up steam in January before anyone had any idea of where the pandemic was going. But then as things sort of got worse and the economy started getting worse and people started staying home, everything sort of really went crazy. The couple months of like March and April were the big months of market rise, when things just got, there's a graph from Pokemon Price, I'll put it up here, which shows the total sales volume, and you can just see that once the pandemic really hit, things just went crazy in terms of price. And even recently, what's become kind of shocking is that the total sales volume, the number of cards sold, has decreased while the total price paid has continued to go up. I think it's starting to even out a little bit. There's been decreases in the price now, but it was really sort of shocking to see that trend. Normally, like, more cards means more money paid, but we were seeing less cards sold and more money paid for those cards, which was really, really, really shocking. So that's sort of where we are now. Everything's gone up, and everyone's sort of stuck asking why. We've got, we know there's some rises before the pandemic. We know there's a lot of rise during the pandemic. So what are each of the individual factors that lead to those market rises and those and the prices we see now? So there's a couple things. One I just want to talk about is the general market trend of Pokemon, and this is outside of the pandemic. And this is that after a certain period of time, usually you're looking at about 20 years or so, collectibles start to rise. And this happens with any kind of collectible. And the reason that happens is because the people who grew up with that item are now entering a stage in their life in which they have disposable income, a job, their living situation is stable, they're not in college anymore, they're usually like a couple of years out of college, they've got a relatively well-paying job that allows them some money on the side, they're just transitioning into a new phase of their life with funding that they didn't have before. And a lot of people, when they have that funding, they're then able to look back and say, well, oh, those Pokemon cards that I always wanted as a kid, that first edition base Charizard, that Neo Typhlosion that I couldn't have, I want it back. I want to collect that again. And, now they have the money to do that. A lot of times when people get back into the hobby, what they say, this happened to me as well, is they look back and they say, oh, I can now buy these cards that I never thought I would have. Just because, first edition base Charizard, that was like an idol card for so many people back in their childhoods, and now they can buy one. Of course, it costs a lot of money, but they can have one for the right price. So when a lot of people start getting that, collecting urge to go back into collecting, that drives market rises. So we saw this in 2016 to 2017 when it happened with first edition base set in the WotC era. People who were collecting, let's say they were 8 years old at the time, 8 to 10 years old, when most people are interested in Pokemon cards. Now they're 28 to 30. They have that disposable income. They have that solid living situation, and it's now time for them to go back into the hobby if they so desire. So this sort of just general demographic rise, a lot of people like to attribute that 2016 rise to things like Pokemon Go, which certainly played a part, but just to consider things like there was people called it the Pokemon Go bubble. I can guarantee you that yes, prices retraced after that, but it was not a bubble. It was not like the Gold Star bubble where everything crashed. The people who bought in then were genuine, interested collectors who wanted those cards. So now, in 2019, towards the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, we were starting to see that same thing happen again with Generation 2 cards. We saw it with Gen 1, now it's happening with Gen 2, the Neo cards. People who collected then are getting back into the hobby. I know some of these people personally who collected in the Neo era. Now they are more grown up, they have stable incomes, they're ready to come back into the hobby. And they're paying for cards. Back in January and February, big thing was PSA 9 T17 first edition, the Typhlosion card. People were losing their minds that it was selling for $500 in January and February. Of course, now it's, $2,000 or something, and it's really, really taken off. But, this was sort of one of the first things that went up. And I don't think that that's a coincidence that one of the first things to go up and sort of be supercharged by the pandemic was a card from Gen 2 that came out about 20 years ago, that 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002 sort of era there. So that's sort of the non-pandemic factor, that we're seeing a lot of these rises. And I think also with those rises, people kind of got wise to this thing that, 2016, first edition base, 2019, 2020, Neo. Now we've seen it twice. It's not very difficult to put the pieces together and say, 20 years, okay, now I can plan for things that might rise in the future. That's what I was doing when back in February I was putting together a spreadsheet and an idea of how much it would cost me to do a PSA 10 first edition, or not first edition, a PSA 10 EX series set, all of the 139 EXs. I have a couple examples here of some big ones, Charizard, Blastoise, Venusaur, how much it would cost me to do that. And one of my big things was that I wanted to get as much of that set done within the next 3 to 5 years, because I thought if I can do that, then I can beat out the inevitable market increases for the EX era set. I think, now with the pandemic, everyone's sort of seen that the prices are becoming a lot more optimized. I think we aren't going to see that 20-year thing anymore. Things have shifted, but I think that that's another factor. People sort of becoming more wise to this idea that, it takes a certain period of time that's actually fairly predictable in order to see some significant rises on these cards. So if I want to collect them, then I better collect them now. If I want to invest in them, then I better invest in them now and see some price rises in the future. So those are just sort of general demographic and general market trends that we were seeing. And it's also, markets go up and down. And there was actually a fairly significant period of decline throughout 2018 and 2019. These couple years, they were after the, big 2016 boom for first edition base. They're sort of mired in the middle of overprinting for modern sets, a real lack of significant movement within the Pokemon market. First edition base had passed. That was even decreasing a little bit. You really weren't seeing a lot of movement outside of 10s. 9s were incredibly cheap. And it was not a very strong period for Pokemon. So it was sort of inevitable that there would be a rebound. So we're kind of getting a perfect storm here. We're getting the demographic rise for things like Neo, people realizing that, this happens, I can play into this, I can buy at certain times, and I can time these rises to buy the cards I want at the right time. And so those are sort of the non-pandemic factors. So I just wanted to emphasize those first because everyone seems to think that, once the pandemic goes away, the prices are going to crash and go back to normal. That's not going to happen. There are things that are influencing the market other than just the pandemic and everything that comes along with it. So next is the sort of all the pandemic related factors in Pokemon, and that includes some other things that people like to think. They like to say that stimulus checks are the reason why everyone is spending a lot of money. Spoiler alert, $1,200 is not a lot of money. It's just not for the vast majority of people. That'll cover your rent for maybe 1 month if you're in a major city on the east or west coast. If you're lucky, it'll cover your rent. $1,200 is not a significant amount of money, even if it's just being given to you tax-free by the government. What is more significant, what's a much bigger influence. Now, I'm not saying stimulus checks have no influence. It was pretty great for me. $1,200 in my bank account. I'll go out and buy some Pokemon cards. But I bought a couple cards, and it really wasn't that significant. I actually think the vast majority of my stimulus check went to my car insurance. So there you go. People aren't necessarily buying Pokemon cards. And the reason why vast majority of my stimulus check went to my car insurance was at the time I had no job over the summer. I'm a university student, graduate student, and I work as a graduate student during the school year, and then I'll find a full-time summer job over the summer, but I didn't have anything lined up, and the bills came due, so that's where the stimulus check went. And I feel like that's a similar story for a lot of people. But what I do want to highlight is the change in spending habits for a lot of people. And people underestimate this significantly, because entire sectors of the economy were shut down completely. You could not go see a movie. You could not shop in a mall. You could not go eat in a restaurant. You could eat takeout, but so many people go out and eat in a restaurant because it's an experience. It's, you go out with your friends, you have fun, you go out to bars. The entire entertainment industry was basically shut down. So people still had, a lot of people, they still had some form of income. The government did a all right job. I don't want to get into politics and anything. The government did an all right job. A lot of governments around the world did a pretty good job with, mobilizing funding to make sure that people who had lost their jobs as a result of the pandemic were not immediately left out to dry. They got supplemental funding. They got stimulus. They got some enhanced unemployment benefits in order to continue to pay the bills. But I think for a lot of people, that having that shift in spending habits, not being able to spend money on going to a restaurant, on going to a movie, people had that money left over and they still wanted to spend it on entertainment, on things that bring them pleasure and excitement. That's why the entertainment industry is so big, because people want to spend their money on this kind of stuff. So they looked for somewhere else to do it. And, the vast majority of stuff like Pokemon is very optimized for online purchases. So, you've got eBay as a massive online marketplace for Pokemon cards. The vast majority of Pokemon stores these days are online. You don't see a lot of local game stores anymore. And when they do, they're much more focused on things like the playing the TCG and less on selling singles and cards from, way back when the old people were collecting. So this shift in spending habits away from entertainment spending and towards online entertainment and stuff that's very conducive to Pokemon spending was really significant. And I don't know, I might put up some statistics or something in the corner just talking about how the increase in disposable income, because people just have that money that they would spend on other things is shifted. People are staying home. They don't have to spend money on commuting. They don't have to spend money on parking. They don't have to spend money on gas. All this stuff that, a lot of people factor into their budget was decreased. So people's money not necessarily, increased, but it was shifted to different areas. So this is, again, something that's kind of important because people like to think that, the federal government just printing money, and as soon as the government pulls back on the money printer, that things are going to crash. And that's not necessarily the case. So, again, it's sort of, everyone's talking about the next stimulus, if, the United States government, Pokemon's a US-based hobby. Mainly the vast majority of transactions are done in US dollars. Obviously the international market, especially Japan, probably the second biggest market. But all that other kind of stuff, the US is, again, it's a central place for the Pokemon market. So everyone's saying that, if we get a second stimulus check, which is looking like it's going to happen once the United States, once the Republicans and the Democrats get together on a deal again, don't want to get into politics. But if a deal is agreed to, and I think it's pretty likely that we will see another stimulus check, everyone's sort of screaming that this is going to be the end of the world, when people get another $1,200 at the Pokemon market, it's going to go crazy. No, it's not. There might be a couple of small increase, but again, like I said, the stimulus check is a much smaller part of the market change, and what I think is a much bigger change is the shift in spending habits away from entertainment outside the home towards entertainment that can be delivered to the home, Pokemon cards. So now that we've sort of gone over the causes of the recent market rise, I want to talk about the future, where I see the Pokemon market going in the future. And I just want to preface this by saying that nobody knows what the Pokemon market is going to do in the future. And if anyone tells you that they know what the Pokemon market is, they know for certain what the Pokemon market's going to do in the future, they're just wrong. I think it's kind of hilarious. We've had some threads on the forum just sort of preaching about the inevitability of a crash in the market. Like, there was one thread, it was actually pretty funny. And it's wholesome, these people, they have good intentions and everything, but it's kind of hilarious. So the thread title was, like, what are you going to buy when the prices crash? Like, get everything lined up for, when the prices crash, get ready to jump on it. It was kind of hilarious because you just had a bunch of people in the thread saying, like, oh yeah, as soon as the prices go, I'm buying everything, then, like, taking up the supply and increasing the prices again. So you're obviously not going to see a crash. But, the future, you've got people who think that the market's going to, go stonkers for infinity, and you've got people who think that the crash is coming tomorrow, and they've thought that the crash is coming tomorrow since March. But again, the reality is somewhere in the middle, right? So when things get back to normal, you're not going to have the same factors that are juicing the market today. People are going to go back to spending that money on restaurants, on movies, on entertainment, on, things that, are more in person, on malls, on retail shopping, that kind of stuff. People are going to go back to doing that. You're not going to have that level of drive in the market anymore. And that's significant. I think much less significant is the removal of stimulus money. I don't know at what point, the pandemic is really going to change things for a while. Everyone who thinks that everything's just going to go back to normal in a couple months, I don't think is really right. Obviously, I don't want to get into a discussion about that in this video, but I think that once things do go back to normal, there is going to be a change in the market. Whether that change is just to, less frequency of sales, the growth stops for a while, whether that change is a stabilization of prices or a decrease in prices, a slight decrease, a more significant decrease, that's yet to be seen. I don't think that the current level of growth that we're seeing is, going to stay forever. Because eventually things are going to shift, right? But even when things do shift, you are still going to have things like those demographic factors, and people realizing that, hey, I can sort of price out these cards and see when the rises are coming. But as I mentioned earlier, I don't think that we're going to be seeing that sort of 20-year pattern really continue to hold true. We're already seeing increases in other stuff. We're seeing level X's increase. These level X's forgotten for years. No one wanted level X cards. These were like less than $10 for all of them in good mint condition. But those are increasing. The 10s for those are several $100s now. Even modern. I've got my PSA 10 Shining Rayquaza. That's a several $100 card now. People are realizing that, hey, PSA 10 graded ultra rare Pokemon cards, even from modern era, could be worth a lot of money. Now, whether these stay the same, whether the prices decrease, I think especially for the vintage stuff. Now, vintage versus modern, that's a whole nother video. But for now, let's just say vintage is like black, white, and before. I think, XY came out in 2014, 2013, 2014. Maybe like, I think it was November 2013, and then the XY base set was like January or February of 2014. Might not be right on that. But again, you're looking at cards that are 6+ years old. Those cards, I think people are starting to realize that a graded 10 of those, no matter what, should be $100 plus, you know. So I don't think we're going to be having a lot of ridiculously undervalued PSA 10 English ultra rare cards. And I think this current rise has illuminated for a lot of people the potential in Pokemon. And I think a lot of people are going. It's going to bring more people in for the future. So in that case, it's really good that we're having more collectors, more people interested in our wonderful hobby, more people participating. So you know, the general trajectory in the future is that, you know, this stuff is not going to continue the way it is today. Things are going to look different in the future, whether that is a stabilization of prices, a decrease in prices, you know, a stabilization of some eras of Pokemon, a decrease in others. You know, I think there are several areas that are fairly inflated right now, especially, you know, PSA 9s and some, you know, I'd say early vintage stuff like Diamond and Pearl, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Black, White sealed booster boxes. When those start going for like $4,000, that's when it's like, all right, let's maybe pump the brakes on that. Don't think that there are reasons why those sets should be selling for that much sealed right now. But again, you know, what's exactly overvalued versus undervalued in this market, again, that's a whole nother discussion. But there's just some stuff that's overvalued and some stuff that's undervalued. So in general, I hope this video explained why we're seeing what we're seeing in the current market. My thoughts on this, you know, the future is, you know, really uncertain. And, you know, people who say that they know what's going to happen in the future, they're just not acknowledging the inherent volatility in the Pokemon card market. And this is something that I've talked about, you know, several times over. And it's why that, like, the whole idea of investing in Pokemon is very sort of touchy, because people who like investing in Pokemon like looking at the last 6 months and saying, oh, everything's stonkers, I'll just buy anything. And it'll all go up in value in the future. And they sort of ignore the years before that, the increases and then the decreases, the small increases, small decreases, and the general volatility of the market in general. So I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. If you guys have any thoughts on the current market, what caused us to get where we are now, where we're going in the future, leave your thoughts in the comments section below. See if I can get some responses out to you guys. So thank you all very much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Stick around for more videos.